during the process. And as our familiarity to one another increased, our ability to disconnect from one another decreased. So as he was trying to pull back his emotions away from me, I could still feel that audiosensory area of his thumping me, and because I had habituated, if you will, with the entrainment from him, I very easily fell into the pattern of continuing to feel him. And so there was no escaping it. I tried to even emotionally cut myself off from it when I was in there with him, and it was a near impossibility, especially after several months of doing it on and off.
Wow. All right. Did he have, you mentioned he laughed, he had a sense of humor.
He did.
Did he have a wish to go home? No, not trying to get into any cliched scenarios here, but was he pretty miserable? How did he take all of this? A prisoner is a prisoner.
He was miserable to the extent that he regarded himself a captive, but he also understood why he was here and his importance of being here. That understanding extended all the way back to his own childhood and his mother. His mother, who had been involved in their society and with the use of their time viewing equipment, such as like a looking glass machine, if you will, was aware that she would be giving her son to the past to try to save our future. She then gave him the private name Kiela, which has 4 very important layers to his name. And he communicated this to me in between wanting to know what my nickname was and all of this business, and wanting to know about my childhood. But he told me that he was named first after Hala, which means portion. She was giving the bread of her life to the world. The second layer was a numerical layer which added to 33, which is a extremely mystic number. Even in Masonry, and I'm not an apologist for Masons, nor am I a Mason, but a lot of the mysticism involving the number 33 actually means 27, and it goes to issues involving the Metatron's cube, the number of spheres in the Metatron's cube, which are capable, if you put a dot in the center of those spheres, of evolving all of the 5 basic platonic solids which create our material reality.
And 2 plus 7 is 9, which Marco Rodin talks about as being the complete ultimate number.
Well, in fact, they worshipped the number 9. The ambassadorial suite, where he was held as captive and then finally as ambassador, originally supposed to be ambassador, then captive, and then back to ambassador, and then was restricted to actually leave by his own people, but we can get to that another time. On the ambassadorial level, it was actually named 4 or 5. So the numbers would add to 9.
Right.
And this even goes to how he was named originally. He called himself 15 or 16, depending upon how you want to take the J or the JA in his name, when he was being named by the Sigma unit, which was his base in the number of years from hearing Blythe. The origin, in fact, of the name for Project Aquarius. But on the third layer of his name, the Chi and the L, if you add that together numerologically, came to the same number, 27. And then finally, layer 4, and this I think should have meaning to everybody. He was named El-Ah, which means prophet of God, Allah.
What did he look like, Dan?
Well, he was...
How tall?
I'm sorry?
How tall?
If he was fully standing, he would be right between 0.9 to 1.1 meters tall. However, with the denuding of his physical condition from the Cockayne syndrome and the neuropathy slumped over, he was approximately, well, actually, he was about 1.1 to 1.2 meters tall if he could stand up. I want to be accurate with this.
Did he have a
slumping, he was about 3 feet tall.
I see. Did he have a spinal column similar to ours? Physiology
Indeed, he did.
Similar?
Indeed, he did. And there was there was a reduction in the number of vertebrae, but the vertebrae, in fact, were formed while denser while there was an increased what's called osteoclast ability for reabsorption of bone, so while it was less dense than ours, his spinal column was present.
I see. Sound like he could have used a good chiropractic adjustment after that crash.
Yeah.
I'm not being totally facetious. I mean, the guy had some spinal problems, and, structure is structure.
Well, indeed he did, and they had a very negative nickname for him, the security unit, and some of the folks inside of Majestic, they called him Stump.
Well, I'm sure he picked that up, and it probably didn't make his day.
It didn't, but he looked beyond most of that. He really did.
Well, let's hope
he
so.
understood that he was here
52,000 years ahead. I would hope he would look beyond our pretty tattered means of addressing people at times.
Yeah, he did. He wanted to see from me the sweeter aspects of my childhood, and so I showed him my favorite cartoon when I was a boy, which was Cecil the Seasick Sea Serpent.
Wow.
And he began
calling Fran and Ollie.
Yeah, well, I know about Kukla, Fran, and Ollie, but this was Cecil and Beanie. This was Cecil and Beanie.
Wow. Now, just because we're talking $52,000, 52,000 years ahead, doesn't necessarily mean 52,000 years ahead in terms of advancement across the board, does it?
No.
See,
no,
I want to get.
Fact,
everyone thinks.
We're talking about two different timelines here.
Right.
Anyway.
Thank you, because people think linear and they think unidimensional, and this is a multidimensional issue. And just because something is 52,000 years in our time ahead of us doesn't mean they are advanced 52,000 years in every aspect.
Well, it would vector forward as linearly 52,000 years if, within the next couple of years, we transition from what we call timeline number 1 over to timeline number 2. God forbid.
Is that the Bush timeline, the Bush-Cheney-Halliburton cabal timeline?
Don't blame us. It's not like we actually voted for him.
No. Listen, he lost. Anyway, when you have that kind of power, it doesn't matter. Back in just a minute with Dr. Dan Burisch. And Marcy, any quick comment as we slide into the break here?
No, but we do have to talk about the timeline issues. This is very important, and it has a tremendous effect on the issue of the extraterrestrial presence.
Very good. All right. And one quick question, Dan, real quick.
Sure.
How many different groups of visitors are visiting the planet at any given time?
I'm aware of 3 physical and 1 interdimensional.
Okay, very good. There's so many different kinds of reports of different shaped hardware flying around up there, one wonders. So stand by, we'll be right back. Bill Hamilton is along, Marcy McDowell is with us, and Dr. Dan Burisch is here. First time on radio, talking about the biggest story of them all, which confirms, if all this is true, that we are certainly not alone, never have been, never will be, and we're talking about many different aspects of being alone here. All right, Dan, let's go right ahead with the story.
All right. Before the break, Marcia mentioned concerning the timeline issue.
Yes.
And the time that we're facing now. I have been specifically warned by members of the Majestic within the last 24 to 48 hours
Right.
what I was supposed to say and what I'm not supposed to say, and what I'm going to say is the truth. It's a difficult pill to swallow. It's a difficult medicine to take, but I'm going to say the truth one way or the other. Presently, we are in what is called the doctrine of the convergent timeline paradox. In other words, being that we're being visited by travelers from our future, there is an overlay of time. We are actually looking into our own future by seeing what appear to be past ruins on other planets. And you may see some of those things change as we proceed past the plane of the galaxy. But time will tell. I'm not exactly sure what we're going to see. But we're anticipating that there is going to be a restacking. Now, if I could set the stage for this a bit. There are 3 prevailing theories out there involving what's called superpositioning, where one reality can be overlaid upon another. One, called the Copenhagen approach, says that everything is in a fuzz, a flux, until it is measured. And then when it's measured, it's fixed, and then we see it as being a physical fixed object. And I think that's arrogant.
Yes.
Another one is the many worlds approach, which says that in every different of an infinite number of universes, an object is in a different position. Depending upon where you are, you'll see it in a different position. And then, of course, we have, finally, Mr. Penrose's interpretation indicating that it falls into a position where least energy would be used. As we proceed into this time, a time that I think is going to be a great renaissance for the human culture, with a codicil that I'm going to come to in a moment, I think that we're facing a readjustment in our reality along the lines of a principle called the Le Chatelier principle, which says that there would be a system which is at equilibrium, which is perturbed out of equilibrium, then moves to relieve its stress. So there's going to be some changes over the next some years.
Kind of like an earthquake fault under pressure.
Kind of like a galactic earthquake fault, yes. Now, the J-rods that have come to us, they're a bit out of phase, if you will. They appear a bit different. They appear a little bit ghost-like. They're from a time other than our own. They appear adjusted out of phase. And so we can feel immediately with them that they don't belong.
That's one of the 3 species that are visiting the planet?
That would be the P plus 52,000 is the one that I had the greatest experience with.
Would that be anything like what we know as grays?
The contemporary gray, the majority of the human grays, so to speak, J-rod interaction, would be the P plus 45,000s.
Okay.
The ones that care very little about us and are doing their own longitudinal research study to try to take care of their genetic problems.
Okay.
Dan?
Go ahead, Marcy.
That actually speaks to the issue of why the MIB feels so wrong.
Indeed.
There's a certain wrongness that just goes right to your core. It just shakes you right up when you're actually in the presence of an MIB. And
who are these MIBs, Marcy? If you can do that real quickly without losing your train of thought here.
Well, they are essentially a rogue element of the extraterrestrial intelligences, the groups that we've ended up calling rogues.
ET intelligences. They look like swarthy Middle Easterners in many cases.
They're P plus 45,000 rogues wearing a human skin.
They're sort of wearing people.
In other words, they've adopted that configuration, but it's a sham. It's
a sham, and they are most certainly enemies.
And you can feel it. You can feel the certain out of syncness. It's almost a dead giveaway that you're in the presence of one of the extraterrestrial.
Are they interfacing logistically with any element of our so-called government or military? Or are they running their own show? Well,
they've been interfacing for years with the operations of Majestic to the point where we actually have treaties with them.
And hence the reason for the Committee of the Majority being phased in, so that there would be fewer treaties out there. Just keeping the treaties in line.
That was actually the inception of the Committee of the Majority from Majestic 12 in 1963, was a threat by the former Soviet Union to begin engaging their own treaties with the extraterrestrial intelligences in an effort to bring it under one umbrella so that the situation could be controlled and ultimately the technologies which could be our own undoing would be controllable. Then President John Fitzgerald Kennedy, together with the old Majestic 12, allowed for the internationalization of the Majestic 12 into the former 33-member Committee of the Majority. And therefore the other countries of the world were brought into the circle involving the treaties with the extraterrestrial intelligences. This was brokered by the former Prime Minister of India, Indira Gandhi.
All right. Marcy, go back to your point, if you could.
What?
Too much goes
my goodness,
on
a lot has gone under the bridge there.
Yeah, it just passes very quickly. I'm sorry.
Oh, that's
there's so many ways to go with this. I'm trying to pick my way through